Welcome to Cyber Tech and Risk. Our segment today will cover DevSecOps automation. I'm Shlomo Bielak and the CTO of Arctiq to help moderate and curate this session. We have the privilege of having many viewpoints, which I think is very important, from managed services to consultation and do-it-yourself customers. This panel is also highly distinguished, and I'd like to start with intros. Evan, please go ahead, introduce yourself.
Yeah, hello everyone. I'm Evan Flewelling, Director of Vulnerability Management here at RBC. Currently managing a team of vulnerability experts driving remediation and leveraging automation across the enterprise. Previously was leading a team focused on cloud vulnerability scanning and automation, building out enterprise scanning capabilities for cloud assets, including containers and virtual machines.
Thanks, Evan. To you, Stephen.
Hello, Stephen Van Wasshenova, Senior Director of Solutions Engineering at Deepwatch, SecOps as a service platform provider for MSSP customers.
Thanks so much. Mark, last but not least.
Hey everybody, I'm Mark Zuzarte. I lead the application security and offensive security practice for BDO Lixar, which is a technology consulting organization. As it relates to this talk, I help customers adopt and implement DevSecOps.
Thank you, Mark. So this is an organic free format. I will entice each of you with some thought-provoking questions and then summarize before moving forward. So why don't we jump in? Let's start with the first question just to get the juice going for this session. Knowing the common challenges in automating DevSecOps, where did you start?
Yeah, I can start off there. I would say starting off, setting clear expectations and boundaries was very important. Defining what those policies and expectations would be and the outcomes as well for what would come from this journey. So, leading towards embedding security, we wanted to know what we were working towards as part of that.
Thanks, Evan. Anybody else?
So typically when we work with customers, we truly try to drive out really what the customer is looking to achieve. Typically, security organizations they're looking at an organization which has adopted DevOps, and they're like, well, we need to adopt a security component of that, which is DevSecOps. But there's a bit of a mind shift and a bit of a change that's required in the way that they're approaching security. So they make sure they understand that they're able to adapt and pivot themselves. I think the second component of that is understanding what their technology landscape looks like. Organizations are pretty quick to say, well, maybe not quick to say, but they want to use their incumbent tools or their incumbent processes. Really, you have to think about redesigning a bespoke security program when you're looking at adopting something like DevSecOps, something that's specific to the way that your organization develops and builds applications and systems.
Awesome. Thanks, Mark. Stephen, you have anything you'd like to add?
Yeah, most definitely. I think part of it also is the charter in which the groups are formed under and what their real accomplishments are meant to be and the goals for those teams. If you're just using the name of the function DevSecOps to be what you think you're going to get out of it, you're going to probably have a bad time. You should have a clear narrative to what the teams and the individuals on those teams are meant to do.
Thanks, Stephen. So I'll do a quick summary. Aligning the stakeholders using a charter, the complexity of the implementation should be considered because of the tool stack and what's available, and then focus on in-band security and what that looks like for the organization so you don't achieve something no one really wanted. I'm going to go a little further into that and cover what a lot of teams currently are doing and maybe why that's not always working. So automation in tools and template libraries are not really the technical debt. We all know that apps adopting it is key. Why does DevSecOps differ so much in complexity compared to all the other security segments? Why does it need a special touch?
Back to that question of charter, the scope of the roles and the roles within the customers that your team has, that level of complexity is no longer just a single functional area. So trying to layer automation on top of that to solve those problems is not necessarily a magic bullet.
Thank you, Stephen. Anyone want to add to that?
So yeah, the team, go ahead, Evan.
Go ahead. Oh, yeah, I was just going to add, so DevSecOps adds a more proactive layer to the security versus a reactive layer. And to Stephen's note, you're combining multiple layers and roles, and having those functions collaborating together is very important.
Thank you. Mark, I know you guys bumped into each other. Did you have something you'd like to add?
No, really echoing what Evan just said, like different teams working together. Traditionally, security organizations, application security organizations had this focus on governance or compliance, trying to find vulnerabilities and tell development teams that they have to fix those vulnerabilities that they found are defects. But really with DevSecOps is security is being built into the program. It's different teams, security, development, system build teams or operational teams working together to make sure that everybody's moving in the same direction. And then the common goal is having a go live, which happens on time, which is secure, and where at the end of the day, the end customer, the consumer of the application or system, if they're getting value and the application is up, stable, and secure, that's a win for everybody. Everybody's moving to the beat of the same drum.
Oh, there's so many tunes that I'm aligned with each of you. I kind of feel like the roles, the RACI matrix, it's a shared responsibility. So the cross-functional requirements are actually a challenge. You have to get over that. People have to share, no fiefdoms. You said proactive, right? It's the mindset to be integration focused versus just the findings and then owning the findings. And then the last piece which is the goal is risk being managed, and that the experience isn't just a blocker. So you got to be a little more flexible when it comes to DevSecOps, which is it was really hard for a security mindset because flexibility is not what we were taught in the past. Let's move into how that flexibility comes. So we're all aware that there's a new application security support team. It's kind of moving around in the market, trying to help move these things along. Why are they key to the adoption of DevSecOps and automating that in-band security?
So I had mentioned before about, I just mentioned about how like the role of the security team changed, and the DevSecOps security team or the application security team or whatever team that's participating on the security side for DevSecOps, their role is now to work with other teams and help them understand how those tools or those automations are working and how to address the findings that are coming out of those tools. So looking at like DevOps or like DevSecOps fundamentals, we're shifting security left. We have all the security that happened at the end of the development pipeline. We're doing it sooner. Other teams that aren't security teams are doing those security functions, and they're getting output from the automation saying that they need to fix defects or vulnerabilities which are being found. Those teams are now, that the security team is now, they have a relationship component to make sure that they have they have that positive relationship with the team that is consuming those findings, but also that they're enabled with the manpower and the technical capability to actually remediate those findings. So they're really a cheerleader for security and really helping support those teams and being really proactive in the security space.
I'll challenge before someone jumps in here. The burden existed. It just wasn't being managed. So it becomes visible. What's your take on, when you put this all in and they see so much that has to do with the technical that goes through the roof, do they play a part in managing that technical debt or that visibility that the burden you already knew was there? Like a DevSecOps expert knows it's there.
Well, the burden's shared now. It's shared across all of the teams which are participating in DevOps. It's not just the security team of being accountable for security. Everybody is now accountable for security. Everybody's moving to that same. We talked about like the beat of the same drum. We're all trying to have security. Everybody's responsible for security. I guess what I'm getting at.
Thanks, Mark. Evan or Stephen, would you like to add?
Yeah, just to add to that strong partnership. So focusing on the most critical risks is very important, especially in pipelines. Otherwise, we risk losing the trust of our developer partners and the business essentially. So it's very important.
Yeah, part of that new shared responsibility is also an implied tech debt in the education space. A DevSecOps team is often going to be ahead of the game where development may not necessarily know those things. And you need to have that partnership to be able to share those pieces of information or parts of education that actually bring the rest of the team up to the level that they are at.
I'll touch on that one because I think it's one of the most important pieces is recognizing that the sustainment and the the self-efficacy that the teams need to have that now spans more than just code is going to require a leader to support that. They're going to need a leader that understands that people will need to have a wider breadth of capabilities within a smaller product team with the support of multiple leaders working together. Keep in mind, the leaders have to work together if the departments are going to work together. So I just want you to get, each of us have seen different organizations. So what do you think the leader type needs to be, or potentially under which role or leadership vertical do you think that's the security automation, the DevSecOps would flourish under a highly technical outcome? There is a cultural element, but it is a highly technical outcome to remediate security findings of applications. Who's first?
Yeah, I'd throw in and say that probably as a leadership style, the delegation style, in my opinion, is one of the most important. That leader, whoever it may be, in my opinion, I would go with the CISO, that person should know how to delegate. They should know who has the authority in which area can solve those issues or to help remediate those problems, and to bring the other individuals into the team or out of the team to help to actually address them.
Yeah, just to add to that, I would agree. Reporting to the CISO would make the most sense in my mind. You know, having that segregation of duties, that objective view on security is important in my mind. Not to take away from the technical aspect of it, but having technical leaders in security is very, very important as well for the delegation part of things.
I think the thing I'll add to that is, like, coming from consulting, I've seen the DevSecOps function report to many different areas. Commonly, it's a CISO, but really where I've seen DevSecOps be successful from a leadership standpoint is having that leader have a relationship with the other executives or leaders that are in their space, so that they're able to have this kind of cross-functional discussions, or as Stephen said, the delegation between different groups, and have a collaborative working relationship. DevSecOps kind of spans all of those different towers, and having that understanding is really important.
So from my side, I've taken that as collaboration and delegation is key for any of the leaders, be it a CISO or the CTO that they report to. I'll throw in something just to see what the feedback would be. I've watched something new that's happening where they create a new leader, a CISO for DevSecOps or application security, that actually is dotted line to the CISO and CTO that has authority in both divisions, so that they become a facilitator of collaboration and delegation and the bridge between the two organizations. How do you think that would play out?
Yeah, it's an interesting concept. I mean, I'd like to see it in action. I couldn't see it being a bad thing, in my opinion. Having that dotted line reporting and having someone that's passionate about both sides would be key to being effective, in my mind.
I don't know anybody that was in that role. Okay, so let's move on to the next question. I think this is the most important one, and I think it reflects the needs of all of these other questions, which is security is being focused very much on metrics and compliance, but metrics can actually deceive us. I want to get your feedback on, why does 100% compliance frighten any DevSecOps elitist who's trying to adopt automation? Tell me the pitfalls, tell me the reasoning.
So I think maybe drawing a bit of a difference between like compliance and then not having any security defects. So compliance, we've all worked in security or worked in organizations which are building apps and systems. You can be 100% compliant and still have tons of security defects. And you're looking at like organizations that are PCI compliant or what have you, they're compliant, but they still have breaches because security defects exist. It's just really tough to not have any security defects or any security issues. Like it's unrealistic and impossible. And kind of go back to the way things were when we talked about like our security training. You can never be 100% secure. DevSecOps and security testing and automating any type of testing or performing any kind of security testing, it's just a layer in your defense in depth stack. It's another thing that you have to help identify and potentially remediate security vulnerabilities and defects, but you still have to have all of those other components in place to have an effective security posture.
Thank you, Mark. Anyone else?
Yeah, to add to that, so I would say on the vulnerability focus side of things, the speed at which some of these new vulnerabilities coming out is mind blowing these
Exactly.
days. So trying to stay 100% compliant to that, even with patching SLAs and turnaround times, is maybe not practical in today's day and age. We have to be flexible to your earlier point. So I think if we were to try and maintain 100% compliance, it would almost be to the point to handcuff the business a little bit.
I'll turn it in a different direction. What would happen if you came into the role to own this space and your reports showed you 100% compliance? What would your feedback to them be?
Say something's broken. Like there's no way it's 100%
You
compliant.
see the data.
Yeah.
Stephen, I'll give you an opportunity on this one.
I mean, I think that's probably a great minimum bar to start with. Because if you're only using a checklist of compliance to say that you are safe or to say that your program is working, you're probably not really being honest about what your program is about and the challenges that you have in front of you. So you need to involve those leaders among your teams to actually get to what is really important to them and what is important to your program.
So I'll break that down into a few steps of, let's walk through what you would try to achieve. So let's, as we covered, detecting defects and breaches are common. It's a way of life, which was shared, and it's more of layers to respond to the environment and context that's ever changing. Was Evan's note, like there's going to be a ton of stuff that happens that is potentially tomorrow, and you can't respond immediately. That's not how we work. But integration isn't enough. The checklist is always integration. It's the measurements that should be the pieces that we're responding to. And then I kind of break it into 4 steps, which is run, scan, run being the integration, scan being what did you see, post being can everybody see it, and then gate. It doesn't have to be a hard gate or a soft gate. I think that will lead to the next question is, when you do get to the point where you are facilitating gates, how do you differ from the beginning of gates towards a mature gate a year down the line? How do you approach it?
I would say it's a journey with security gates, and you have to start small. You have to start somewhere. To your point about soft gates versus hard gates, starting with a soft gate is probably the best starting point. See what's working, get people up to speed and involved with the risks that are being highlighted, then move to a small hard gate and kind of expand from there as people mature and get used to having that secure DevOps process through the pipeline.
Stephen, you mentioned the education. Do you think you'd use some of the gating for that purpose up front?
Oh, definitely. I mean, in a gate scenario, there's really the recognition of a carrot and a stick, and which one of those is either helping you through the gate or pushing you back. And if you find that education is the thing that's lacking, that is not letting you through the gate, then use that as a carrot. Offer education and training in those areas where teams haven't risen to the bar to be able to get through that gate, and encourage them to up their game.
I'll move into that section because I think the learning and how we do it is very unique. There's many different methods to do it. There's LMS, there's code bashing, there's consultants that come in and give you guidance. What do you think is the most effective for actually getting the teams, once you've started to see what these gates find? So transparency is there, visibility is there. The teams actually need to fix the technical debt. How do you get them to practice not to create more technical debt? What methods have you seen work really well to keep developers, as well as the DevSecOps experts that are trying to make things improve and create inbound security? How do you get them to continuously practice well?
So one of the things that worked well for me, and I think it may be a symptom of me having both like an application security background, but also an offensive security background, is we started teaching developers how to exploit vulnerabilities. So, and like we actually walk them through some of the high level toolkits, understand how things like SQL injection actually work and how it's exploited in the wild. When they saw that, it was very relevant, and they felt that now that they understand how it works and how easily it can be done, it became much more of a like they something that they really felt driven to fix and not code in the future because they had that muscle memory around exploitation. I just felt that really resonated with the team, and they got a lot out of it.
Yeah, totally agree.
So thanks, Mark. Steven, I take that as you want the person who's coding, whoever it is, doesn't always have to be a dev. It could be an operational member that's now coding and using Git, as we're seeing GitOps for operations. That's just as important in your coding practices when you create environments. You're saying the exploitability and getting the person to be 1 degree of separation of that risk so they understand what could happen to the business based on their actions versus someone else's, I think is essentially what we're after, is connecting the dev as close to any dev. When I say dev now, it's not just a developer, it's a dev that's in operations and the security team. Each of them should have that understanding of the exploitability. I did touch on a new topic, which is GitOps. Have any of you had teams started leveraging GitOps to create development practices similar to what we're talking about with in-band security, but within operational teams, and that the AppSec team or the practice of the AppSec team is actually being fostered within the operations team? Are any of you seeing that? More elaborate than shaking your heads, yes.
Yes, I have seen that. We have a large operational support team, and previously their role was limited only to operational support activities that were hands-on keyboard, break fix type activities, but that wasn't necessarily within the development space. They weren't empowered in that range. And, from a couple of years ago, turning that narrative on its head and saying that the development mentality should be the first line. If you can't solve it through code and you're doing it by hand, then you're missing an opportunity to automate that opportunity. And you are going to be signing up for doing that long term. And, having that kinetic learning moment where you see how easy it is to exploit that situation and giving them the opportunity to fix it right then and there, instead of having to remediate it after the fact multiple times over until they're, sick and tired of it. That really is the light bulb moment that has changed a lot of operational work and has implemented that GitOps flow.
So the feedback loop of seeing what's actually happening every time they're not practicing is key. I'm going to give a different scenario that happens that I think is very common. Is you come to a team, you have progressive thoughts, you're in the role, and they say, I don't have capacity. I don't know how many of you have seen, I can't prioritize this now, I don't have capacity. What's your response to coming to a team and you're the collaborator, you're the one fostering delegation, you want security and band, and the response you get is, I don't have capacity. How do you handle it? I know we've all seen it, because it's not always the same priorities, right? You have disjointed priorities. How do you handle it? Or maybe the priorities got corrected.
So typically I kind of walk them through, or try in a very concise manner as possible, because obviously they don't have a lot of capacity to even listen to me, but we talk about how much time they're actually spending on security right now. And then DevSecOps actually, when it's implemented and it's running properly, reduces the amount of time that they're spending on security, because it's happening with a programmatic approach with automation. They're getting continuous feedback from the development pipeline about security vulnerabilities versus being stuck at a gate or right before go live, trying to address all of this massive laundry list of security vulnerabilities or security defects. And it's just really going to help them down the line and show them that. It's really an uphill battle, but with the right development teams and the right support from leadership, it's totally doable.
So I have two. Oh, go ahead. Sorry. Go ahead, Evan.
I was just gonna add. So coming into that position, I would say it would be important to take a look at what are the priorities at this point. Are some of these more reactive priorities versus can we be proactive, try to automate some of this work to alleviate the team to focus on more forward-thinking initiatives?
So getting the leadership to understand that there should be maybe a rejig of the priorities, measuring the savings of human effort, and then understanding that there's upfront costs. All DevOps, DevSecOps have upfront costs, but the long-term benefits are always outweighing it. You have to articulate that. I'm going to go into different scenarios along the same line. What if they have nothing? What if security is nothing? And then you're what's your long-term benefits of I'm not even doing it at all right now? How would you change the discussion to sell that initiative, which is I don't have the human benefits advantage because you don't spend a single minute on security? What would you tell those organizations when you come in, they don't want to prioritize security, but you don't have that that benefit of toil? I know it's a hard one, but it's actually quite common in the market. And I just, not at RBC, but at other organizations, it's a possibility to occur. How do you handle those clients that have no security initiatives and you need to sell them?
From my perspective, it's dollars. You can clearly articulate the amount of money it will take to resolve that issue 6 months from now, and the amount of capital that you're going to have to spend to resolve that. If you would have put in, 10 minutes worth of prevention upfront, if you would have baked that into your process, you could save yourself so much later down the line. Usually those conversations, it immediately becomes obvious that lack in your stack is going to bite you later.
So it will matter. And if you don't do it now, you're going to have way more technical debt is one of the, and then you also said there's going to be a cyber hit. You're going to have some costs to this. Anybody have anything else they would like to add?
It's my approach is very similar. And I'm sure like we will do that in like do this in the security space, but we don't want to be like the bull who cries wolf. We don't want to be the naysayer. But security is reality, and being able to provide some evidence from the industry that shows the actual the downfalls of not having implemented security upfront, or being able to show some of the audit work that they probably already have. And most organizations just with compliance are doing something like penetration testing, and they're doing penetration testing at the end, and they're seeing that they have security vulnerabilities and security issues. They might not have a programmatic approach to security in their pipeline, but they know that they have those security defects in place, and they know that they're at some point going to have to remediate them. DevSecOps and doing security testing as part of the pipeline, we're kind of shifting that like where the security remediation occurs, or whether maybe not the remediation, but the detection of those security issues where those are occurring.
Mm-hmm.
It's kind of like instead of having someone outside saying, here's your mess, you say, don't worry, I already know I have a mess. Yeah, and then you have the industry insight, so you can compare that organization to another and be like, hey, you're in this segment. These guys are like 5 levels of maturity above. Don't you think that puts you at risk? Any last thoughts on the topic, because we're coming to the hour?
I'll leave that one to the experts.
Different viewpoints, all experts.
Yeah, we're all experts here, especially maybe just in our different areas. I think the big thing for me, and looking at the organizations I've worked with DevSecOps, and Shlomo and I were kind of talking about this before, which is just culture and building, fostering that the DevSecOps culture, understanding really what you're looking to achieve through DevSecOps. That's really the key to foundational success. Yes, there's going to be technical challenges on top of that, but making sure that everybody understands what you're looking to achieve through DevSecOps and have the culture is super important. And I think that's from the work I've done. That's the thing that really helped build an effective program.
Okay, with that, thank you, Mark. I'll try to close off here with one thought, which is just as you need moderators to run sessions, DevSecOps implementation needs community management, and that community manager advocates for the change that's not naturally or organically happening, and then out of trust and displaying capabilities, the shift goes towards it, just like accents. You need those people, either partners, managed services, or do it yourself. You need to have those community managers that people are driving the change around. And DevSecOps need it the most because of the cross-functional requirements. Evan, Stephen, Mark, thank you very much for joining me. I thoroughly enjoyed walking the audience through these challenges, and hopefully they don't have the same pitfalls we've all seen. And I hope they feel that they had some great benefits and insights. Thank you so much for joining us.
Thanks for having us.